Welcome once again, horror lovers. Today's murderer is someone who loves human skin, no matter its condition or source. Whether it's from a youngster or an elder doesn't matter. Moreover, he always keeps a piece from each one of his victims. Irene had followed her routine of going out to run every morning, without fail, for a while now. She would wake up so early that the sun would start coming out once she was heading back home. At first, she was scared because everything was so dark, but she soon got used to the morning darkness. One day, she wanted to break her record and go farther than ever, and so she ran and ran until reaching a zone she wasn't familiar with. It seemed that nobody lived there, since all the buildings around were abandoned. Among them, one building stood out due to its luminous entrance to an underground parking lot. Irene thought it would be a good idea to go in there, have a look around, and then head back. She could finish her run right after, and she loved getting out of her comfort zone, feeling a bit of adrenaline every now and then. So she tied her shoes tightly and carefully went down the steep slope. That parking lot had a light on, which was strange since the building seemed abandoned and should have no electricity. And then, all of a sudden, she heard a strong thud at the other side of the lot. She decided to follow the source of that sound. Irene wasn't sure if she would know how to get back home, so if there was someone else there, she could ask them. She walked between dozens of abandoned cars. They were filled with dust, and almost all of them had finger drawings on the windshields. When she reached the end of the parking lot, all she found was a wall with a door. And after a few seconds hesitating whether she should open it or not, she decided she had gone too far and that it was best to go back home. However, when Irene turned around to leave, she heard how the door opened behind her back. She turned around to greet whoever was there, but what she saw paralyzed her in fear. In front of her was a man with a face made of pieces of other people's faces, with the seams clearly visible. And on his back, he was carrying a corpse where the skin of their face had been torn off. Irene then lowered her gaze, and in shock she saw a chainsaw on the man's hand. And as that murderer started to approach her, Irene came back to her senses and ran away as fast as she could. But unfortunately, that man was much faster and caught up to her pretty quickly. Irene woke up handcuffed where she had seen the other corpse. Now she could take a closer look at that horrifying mask made of human skin. She knew she was done for, but even though nobody would hear her scream, she yelled at the top of her lungs and struggled as much as she could to see if her chains would yield. Irene stayed awake while that monster turned on his chainsaw and slowly approached her. And very carefully, the man cut her face. First the chin, going up the left cheek, reaching her forehead, and finally completing the entire shape of her face. Leatherface the murderer then grabbed a bit of Irene's torn off skin and added it to his horrifying mask.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you on the next episode.